Are you an established small business owner or aspiring entrepreneur? Would you like professional advice to help your business grow and succeed? Well, look no further. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center is the territory's #1 resource to move your business forward. Enjoy no-cost advising, low-cost training, and technical assistance from experts in both the public and private sectors. The VI SBDC is nationally accredited and sustained by the University of the Virgin Islands and the U.S. Small Business Administration. Visit us at our locations on St. Thomas, St. John, or St. Croix, and follow us on social media at VI SBDC. For easy access to all our training and networking events, be sure to join our newsletter and download the VI SBDC app. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center, here to help your business start, grow, and succeed.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sharika Industrious Phillips, and I am the Network Marketing Coordinator here at the VI SBDC. At the VI SBDC, our mission is to provide the tools, training, and resources necessary to help Virgin Islands small businesses start, grow, and succeed. Today, we are incredibly excited to introduce our resource partner right here in the territory, an organization that is going to be a game changer for our local entrepreneurial ecosystem. Success in business rarely happens in a vacuum. It requires a map, a bit of grit, and most importantly, the right guidance. That is where SCORE comes in. As the nation's largest network of volunteer business mentors, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs establish and scale their companies. Through our new partnership here in the USVI, you now have direct access to that massive wealth of expertise right here at home. Gautam Chisholm is a local SCORE certified mentor. He understands the unique landscape of doing business in the USVI and is here to show you exactly how SCORE can support you. Whether you are still in the idea phase or you've been running your company for years, his service is definitely going to help you propel forward. Next slide. All right, so here's his bio. Let's give you some information about him. Gordon moved to St. Thomas USVI in January 2025. He has been a SCORE certified mentor since 2017, serving in the Washington, D.C., Jacksonville, Florida, and Broward, Florida chapters, and serves 53 clients across the United States. Born and educated in Zimbabwe, he has worked in South Africa, the Middle East, England, Canada, and the United States in various marketing roles in automotive, tobacco, and confectionery industries. His corporate packaged goods experience was developed primarily in the adult beverage industry, where he worked for 21 years with spirits leader Bacardi Limited. He is a branding and commercial marketing leader, providing marketing and sales enablement strategies to enhance business performance. Here's a friendly reminder to place your questions in the chat, and they will be addressed by the presenting team, either directly in the chat or later during our question and answer segment. A copy of today's presentation will be attached to the Pro Survey email sent after today's live session. We encourage you to take a few minutes of your time to briefly fill out the survey that lets us know how we are doing. This data is essential to us, rendering these deliverables complimentary to you. So Gordon, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor over to you so you can show us how we can truly navigate and elevate with SCORE.
Thank you, Sharika, and I think we should be good with the sound. Thank you to you, Sharika. Thank you to the SBDC for hosting this seminar, and we love to get the good word out there. I can say when I first encountered SCORE, it was this undiscovered gem. It was this free service that was part of economic empowerment that is free of charge in terms of mentoring, and available to anybody, any entrepreneur who might be thinking to go into business for themselves. So I myself started actually as a mentee or as a customer of SCORE, and very quickly realized what a powerful vehicle this was to be able to advocate, to share knowledge earned over a lifetime, and to be able to help small businesses. So again, thank you very much indeed for hosting SCORE. So what is SCORE? As an interesting acronym, got nothing to do with playing football or scoring goals, but it is really about scoring in business. And the original acronym stood for the Service Corps of Retired Executives, which is really no longer reflective of our volunteer body, which has now, I'd say, moved into the modern age and incorporates some executives who've worked in careers in corporate life, but now has a lot of entrepreneurs who themselves started business, have used SCORE as a tool, and then they themselves have volunteered their services to become SCORE certified mentors. So a little more upon what Sherika started off with, but we are a non-profit organization, which means that we are volunteers. We are not paid, and we are members of the largest network of free business experts in the country. Specifically here in the US Virgin Islands, for organizational reasons and reporting structure, it made best sense for the Virgin Islands to plug into SCORE on the mainland, and we plug into SCORE Broward in Florida, who are our alma mater, if you will. And we're really about getting businesses started. We'll get in just now into other phases of business where we might be of use, but it's really about helping businesses either even formulating and articulating what it is that they want to do as a business, and to then help them with tools and advice along the way to get them to that point where they do actually manage to start up or proceed. So things might include, the classic questions we get are things like, if I form a company, should that be an LLC? Or what's the difference between a C Corp or an S Corp? Those types of directional questions, we can help guide you to the correct resources to help you to be able to get things started. There's about 11,000 of us across the country, so you might initially interact with my colleagues, Robert Reffel, and with Steve Clayton and myself. But we will be able to, at time when we need expertise or support from other mentors with other subject matter expert sort of areas, we'll be able to plug into them as well. So we are well resourced to meet the needs of you, and that includes technical competencies that might not be in ourselves, but might be available to us as subject matter experts in other parts of the country. So with that said, every organization, as with your own business, wants to have a mission, a vision, a purpose. You'll hear items like that. But the mission of SCORE is to foster vibrant small business communities. And the way in which we foster those vibrant small business communities is through two major tools, mentoring and education. And we'll get into those just now. Another point I'll say here is that we are a resource partner to the Small Business Administration. And that's because small businesses are and continue and will be always the lifeblood of America. These are the business taxpayers of the future. So critically important to the economic infrastructure of the country, and the reason why the SBA utilizes organizations like SCORE as resource partners, and also SBDC and other entities as well. On a more personal level to a business person, I think it's important to understand that you are entitled to, in our view, as entrepreneurs or as startups or as companies that might be growing, you are entitled to the support that you need to thrive as a small business owner. And by offering a free advisory service or counseling service, which is our IP as a volunteer organization, you basically have access to that without having to go through the hurdle of cost. And that's an important benefit to you. So how do we work with you? I've mentioned that we're free. We have no agenda. We are not here to use you towards business exploits. We are not here to use you towards acquisition of new clients or new business development. We are truly here, literally free and unbiased. And we tend to serve best against maybe communities or entrepreneurs who might be underfunded, might still be speculating and in that contemplative phase of deciding what it is that they want to do. It's really hard to talk to somebody in confidence about a business concept you might have, but which you've yet to maybe even visualize, put down on a bit of paper, think about doing a business plan. So again, we're here. We are totally volunteer, and we're here to help you with that. We happen to, because we provide an important service to, for example, funding entities. So, for example, banks are in the business of selling banking services, which includes business loans or servicing loans, things like that. And along the way, they will tend to use tools like a business plan by which to screen and to assess a candidate for a loan. And to make the bank's job better or easier, if you will, SCORE, for example, can help you in terms of developing that business plan and helping you get that business plan to the point that when you're presenting it to the bank, it's articulating the correct areas and is best positioned. At least the bankers know that the client that they are looking to possibly advance a loan has been taking counsel and mentorship from SCORE. So to be honest, it's actually to the benefit of a business to involve SCORE as soon as they can in their business process. And then finally, I think with a lot of businesses, there's commercially sensitive information. For example, if you have a new product that you want to launch on the market, you probably want to keep that as confidential as you can so that your competitors don't learn about you. So in this area, I'm going to reference the fact that when you're engaging with SCORE, you're automatically covered by, we have a blanket NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement, which basically guarantees security around information that you share with us. So in a way, it's like, but not the same as client-attorney privilege with a lawyer, but you can share with us information and be secure in the fact that this information remains confidential within the SCORE organization. So I touched earlier on what it is that SCORE does. And so I figured at this point, we could maybe talk a little around mentoring and the other two areas of education. But mentoring it's a very interesting vehicle. And I'm going to say that certainly subsequent to COVID, it originally used to be person to person. We would literally meet people in person physically. And that was the way in which the mentoring interface occurred. And then with COVID, of course, we all had to go through the social distancing chapter in our lives. And at that time, technology advanced. People embraced technology. People embraced video conferencing as a useful medium in which to be able to interact with SCORE. So we're happy to interact with you in the type of medium that you are most comfortable with. In my case, I interact with clients all around the States. A lot of them are on my screen. I'm doing Google Meet meetings with them, so video conference meetings with them. I also do in-person meetings, for example, with some clients that I have here in St. Thomas. Personally, I prefer in-person. It helps you understand one another's interpersonal chemistry. And ultimately, in finding the right mentor, you want somebody who is able to unlock value for you, point you in the right direction, plug you into good resources, but most importantly, somebody with whom you are comfortable with connecting. And I think that's probably my favorite way of connecting is in person. I'm happy to video conference as well. There are those who prefer to do it by phone, that's fine. And email mentoring, which I think is extremely slow and long, is another tool that has been used. The important thing is that think of mentoring or SCORE as your, what would I call it? I guess we are your marathon partner on your marathon of running a business. So you might interact with us. I have most of my clients I've been interacting with for over 5-6 years, multiple meetings across every year. So it's a journey and a journey that we share with you. We're here as long as you need us, is the bottom line to what I'm saying. In the educational bucket of resources that we offer, we either have workshops, which are these educational sessions, We'll get into a few of those, and we'll look at a website just now to see where to find those. But those types of session are very important because, you know, you're in a setting like this. You've got the opportunity to, through perhaps the chat function, interact with other business owners or small business owners. So people actually network within workshops and also obviously benefit from the content and the subject matter expertise that is being shared. And then the third bucket is around online resources. There are those who are already in business and cannot just carve out time to attend a workshop at a certain time of day. Or it might be somebody who is more passive in their learning style, and they prefer to be able to go and pull something off the shelf electronically, go through that at their own pace, and then complete it at their own pace. So really, that's where these online resources are extremely useful. And in there, we've got things like articles, there are templates, assessments, etc., and a whole library of previous business webinars. An additional point I'd make here is think of using both the education component and the mentoring in combination. In other words, there are certain workshop series that you can be doing online. You're doing that at your own pace. And then you can also connect with a mentor to say, hey, Steve or Robert or Gordon, you know, I've been doing the startup phase. I'm in phase 3. I'd just like to check in with you, sounding board, and, you know, help me out. Am I sort of following along correctly, or is there anything else I can be doing? So you can basically kind of use both our educational components and us, your mentors, as sort of in tandem is probably the best way I could say it. I'm just going to pause for a second because I can't see any chat box. I'm just literally looking at my presentation slides. But Sherika, are there any questions so far that might be coming up?
Not at the moment. You can continue.
Perfect. All right. So what would this be like, this mentoring experience, if you chose to take this journey with us? We're trained to, they use an acronym for us as well. It's called SLATE. And SLATE is about you have to stop and you have to suspend your judgment. It's the first thing that we do when we're mentoring you. We clear our minds. We're open to anything it is that you have to say. And then the L of SLATE is that we listen, and we listen hard, and it's engaged listening, active listening, to truly hear what it is that our clients are articulating to us. So we're listening with the intention of learning the situation that a client is in. The third letter of our SLATE acronym is the E, which is about expectations. Sorry, it's A. It's about assessing and analyzing the information that the client gives us. So if I'm talking to somebody about hot sauces and they've been telling me all about their hot sauces, I would, at that point in the assessment phase of my mentoring lesson with them, I would say to them, well, you know, have you done a competitive analysis? Do you understand the market dynamics of the market that you're moving into? It's a sort of a questioning phase, but it's about assessing to be able to understand what it is that the client is looking for. We then move from there to coming up with some initial hypothetic suggestions and answers to the assessment. So once the client's told us about the business, what the dynamics are, where they're getting into talking about, okay, would it be valid that maybe we want to be talking about financing at this point, or perhaps preparing a business plan or a market analysis? That would be kind of like the testing phase of the mentoring session. And then finally, the last part is really about giving next steps specifically, and setting expectations and encouraging clients about, okay, the next steps down your journey from our discussion today have been, this was your situation. This sounds like your plan to take in the next steps. Here are the things that you're going to do. I'll tell you what, in our next session, we're going to pick up with you, and we'll pick up from where we're leaving off today. We'll send you some notes about the discussion that we have had, and we will set up with you a next meeting for you to be able to then continue on the journey with us. So pretty much that's kind of what to expect. Here on the slide, I'm not reading everything on the slide, but it is about support, guidance, confidentiality, and encouragement. It's about your goals, learning about your challenges, trying to come up with some answers for your questions, or at least preliminary areas of discovery for you to undertake to then help us get to that next step and to help define those clear next steps. We've talked about the sessions being ongoing. We've talked about them being completely confidential, the way in which we can do them. And again, this is another example where we might lean into the educational component. For example, Robert might say to you, hey, I really think you might find value using this cash flow template, which is available for you in the online library at score.org. And you'll be able to go into there and use those types of tools. The last thing I'll say here about mentoring, and I think it's very important to clarify it, is we are not here as mentors to do the work for you. You're there to do the work. We're here to give you advisory services and advice and counseling. So we guide you and we advise you. We don't do the work for you. You'll be doing the work, and then we'll be checking in with you and then providing you the guidance to those next steps. Another question which sometimes comes up, because there are a lot of economic empowerment agencies out there. We've heard of SBA or the EDA or SBDC or SCORE. There's all of these acronyms. But I thought at this point, I would try to clarify the difference between the two entities with whom you're engaging today. So through the auspices of the Small Business Development Center here, actually physically in St. Thomas, we're talking to you about the SCORE service and what we provide to you as clients. So starting with relationship to the SBA, the SBDC is a funded network of local centers, in this case, obviously St. Thomas, USVI, often hosted by universities. So here we are hosted with the UVI. SCORE, on the other hand, is totally a nonprofit. We're a resource partner, and we are made up of this national volunteer mentor network. In terms of role or what's going on, SBDC provides professional one-on-one business consulting. So it's a consulting role with hands-on technical assistance to specifically getting components done. On the SCORE side of the equation, as mentors, we're providing you with free confidential mentoring and advice, plus we're giving you access to the types of tool that are going to help you in perhaps constructing, for example, a business plan. And that would include these templates, webinars, and online content. What is the profile of an SBDC advisor, for example, versus a SCORE mentor? With the SBDC, you are working with paid business consultants, advisors who have ongoing training and have documentation requirements. These are true professionals and really good at what they do. SCORE mentors, we're volunteers. We might be current business owners. We might be retired corporate executives. We're people sharing practical experience. And I think here what I would separate out and just build on this point to say that our expertise is based on knowledge that has come through direct experience. And for that to happen, it's not that we've learned our lessons in the abstract by reading a book. We've learned our lessons literally by being hands-on. And we're all familiar with, the risks of business, right? There's a high failure rate for new businesses. And we ourselves in our careers have not been faultless. We are all fallible, and we have all made mistakes along the way. And I could say that when you fail, you learn. And those failures translate into the learning and into the IP that we can share with you, where you don't have to make those same mistakes. Or you might choose to say, maybe those mistakes happened long enough in the past that that's just legacy, and maybe it's a new world and it won't happen again. That'll be up to you. But this is where I think leaning into the business experience of people who are SCORE volunteers adds massive value to what you are journeying. In other words, on your journey, you could be working with, say, an SBDC consultant, and you could be working with a SCORE mentor. Cost, many trainings through SBDC, absolutely free, low cost. Like today, consulting is free through SBDC, and the same applies to SCORE. There is one caveat with SCORE, which is that due to a temporary suspension of funding through the SBA, just due to the current administration, there has been a shortfall in revenue, which means that we do have to implement a small charge for some of our webinars, but that will be very self-evident when you go on the website to check out what is chargeable and what is not, but again, at a very nominal fee. And then what is the best use case, I think is what we used here. What is the best use case with SBDC with an advisor? It's when you need structured help on a very specific business project. It might be compiling your pro forma income statement or writing that business plan. Those types of items would be the best use case where you'd be working closely with your advisor or consultant through the SBDC. And then in the case of SCORE, it's when you need that ongoing advice. You sometimes need to just tell your story. I sometimes joke about business therapy, but I think there is a little business therapy because we've probably walked in the shoes that you're walking in and able to perhaps empathize with you and provide you with some additional angles through which to be looking at a particular problem that you might be facing. So again, it's about experience-based guidance. So at this point, I am going to pause and hopefully we can try to extract an answer. But I'd be interested to know for any of the attendees right now, maybe in the chat you could do this for me, but could you just put in there what stage your business is at right now? And it might be, you can choose one of these if you like. Are you pre-operational or are you in launch or early operations or growth or whatever? It doesn't really matter. Just give me an idea if you wouldn't mind. In the chat, preferably, where you are in terms of your business journey. And I'm going to pause for a hot minute. And Sherika, if you wouldn't mind glancing for me to let me know if I get an answer to that question.
All righty, we already have one in there, and this person selected pre-operational.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. It helps me better tailor what I'm talking to when I understand the audience. So thank you for sharing that with us. Pre-operational. Well, first of all, I can tell you, I'm going to be selfish and tell you about a time when I was pre-operational. I used to have a business. After I had finished my corporate life, I started up a little marketing consultancy. And you know what my greatest difficulty was? It was articulating what it is that I wanted to do. And I can remember going to a meeting. It was in Washington, D.C. It was called the Chapter 40 Plus, and it's really for people aged 40 and over looking at their next career step and sometimes considering starting their own business. And there was a gentleman there, and he was talking about, he said, if I meet you, he said, I don't want to hear much from you, maybe 30 seconds at the most, but I need you to articulate to me who you are, what it is that you want your business to do, what kind of a value that represents to me, why would I even be interested in it? And I want to know what makes you different from all of the other marketing agencies out there. And, I sat back in my seat and I was not ready. I didn't even think about it. So I think in that pre-operational phase, I'm going to project that my personal situation just to say that sometimes when you're pre-operational, you might have a bunch of concepts or maybe just a single concept that you're thinking about that might come to life as a business. And you've got to figure out what kind of a path is it that I would want to take to be able to get a new business up and running. So at that point, a pre-operational phase, often it's about validating the idea that's in your head. So I'm going to go back and use my personal example. I thought I'd be a red hot marketing agency. Ha ha. But when I sat back and I thought about it and I thought, well, okay, if I think I'm so great, maybe I should take this out and I'll just do a quick Google search and I'll pretend that I'm somebody looking for a marketing agency. What would be the search terms that I put into Google? So I went in there and I put in there marketing agency nearest me. Well, up came a sea of marketing agencies. Of course, the ones that popped at the top were the ones who were paying ads. They would pop up first. But I got to realize that my concept really was a commodity. It wasn't really something uniquely different. And I knew that it would be very difficult if I went back to talking to that gentleman at Chapter 40 Plus. And if he said to me, so Gordon, what makes Chisholm Marketing Solutions so exceptionally different? I would have been at a battle to be able to explain to him. And I would probably have said, well, it's because of my personal story and my ethics and so on. But that's just an example of, as I say, a concept or an idea and checking to see what is the landscape of competition that is out there into which you are entering with your concept. So it's kind of gauging the environment. It sees what else is out there. And then it gets to also doing a little, and I'm going to say this is probably the most painful part. We all love our own babies, right? And your concept is your baby. And you might absolutely love your concept. You might think it's the best thing in the world. But if you can contain yourself and ask a group of people who you think would be your ideal target audience, and if you went to them and you said, hey, I've got this concept, here's how it might work. Obviously, I think it's pretty exciting, and I'm thinking about investing a lot of time and perhaps investment behind this concept. Here's what the concept would do for you as a possible client. I think you are the ideal client. Would this be of any use to you at all? Ask the question. And that's the research. It's basically validating your hypothesis, which is that your concept is amazing. Sometimes it can be pretty painful too. For me, it was definitely a repositioning experience, but one which was very valuable because I got to realize that, okay, wow, here's what I'm going in against. And then it moves into sort of like planning, so when you're planning the business, as I say, it might start with, for example, I use this word dimensionalize. It's like dimensionalizing what's in your head. I'm a visual person, so I literally get up a great big piece of paper or something, and I'll literally kind of do some boxes. There's something out there which is a great tool for you to be able to use as well. But it basically helps you map kind of what your business is, what's going to be your costs, who are going to be your customers, what's going to be your supply chain. It enables you to put together kind of an overview of the business. And through that, you can then start to figure out, okay, what are going to be the components of the business plan that at one stage I'm going to need to write, either to get myself organized and planned, and then maybe to take to others, like, for example, the bank manager, if I'm going to be going and asking for a loan. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the pre-operational phase. And thank you again to the attendee who shared that with us. The main thing is yes.
Sorry for interrupting. Thank you so much for sharing. But for the sake of the conversation, we also had someone respond with growth as their stage. And
Great.
Someone else also said between pre-operational and launch.
Okay, perfect. I love it. So we've kind of got those 4 sort of stepping stones, if you will, in terms of the cycle represented in our attendees. So again, thanks to those additional folks who provided that input. That's extremely helpful. So yes, I'd say probably in the sort of the launch phase, during your launch, it's sometimes about being able to iterate. They say no matter how right you write a plan, or how well you write a plan, the second you've finished it, the plan is broken because something has changed. One of the assumptions that you used to build the plan has changed. And what we might have expected in the plan has now actualized into reality, and it's not what we thought it was going to be, right? So during the launch phase, you're initially kind of, you're going through trying to set up what they call a proof of concept. So you've taken your concept, now you're launching it, and you're kind of kicking the tires and you're checking to see, okay, does this really actually work? This is when, for example, you might be getting initial feedback to maybe some of the price points that you believed were the right price points to launch with. It's that point where maybe you thought that by working with your cousin as your operations manager, maybe your cousin wasn't the best fit for that operations manager position. And you've had a few breakdowns maybe in the operation. That's where you're kind of learning those things during that launch phase. But as you move forward and get into early operations, this is the point where you're now taking some of those proof of concept items and you're trying to make them better. So you're going to basically refine them. All the way along, we all know this feeling. This is the most painful one, but of course it's cash flow, right? Cash is king. Cash flow is king. You can have a concept that on paper is going to make $1 billion of profit. But if you can't get that business through the first year because you ran out of cash at a critical juncture, it's game over. So it's about surviving at this stage as well, using the funding pecuniously, if you can, to try to get yourself through and stabilizing the business. The next phase, this growth phase, is, I think, to be honest, one of the more intimidating parts, because there's the angst that sits with, I can stay where I am for the rest of my life, I think, business life. I think I've refined enough to be able to stay alive. I can survive. I think I can keep things going this way. But I'm at that point where I think I can grow. Now, I might be growing because I'm going to add some new services. Let's say I have a portfolio of services that I offer, janitorial services. And I've noticed that when I'm providing janitorial services, maybe to, let's say, a government entity, there's an opportunity for some additional pieces of work that are kind of just outside my scope in terms of my capabilities right now and my cash flow. But man, could I nail that if I could do it? But damn, I don't have the cash. I don't have enough money. I'm going to have to scale up. I need to hire some more people. There's only enough of me to go around, and I can't be working more than the 24/7 that I am. So that's that kind of that phase where you're that in that kind of growth phase where you want to be scaling. And the exciting part of scaling is that when you are moving to a greater economy of scale, your fixed cost per service or per product or per item that you are manufacturing, selling, or developing, those unit costs come down. And suddenly, what used to be that impossible minimum order quantity that your supplier required from you, you can now meet that minimum order quantity, and suddenly your costs come down. So growth, equally terrifying and equally incredibly gratifying, and an amazing phase to be going through. So a great phase to be in your business. The maturity part of it is really, it's around finally sort of systemizing what you're doing. This might be where a company might be thinking about, okay, should we perhaps be thinking about maybe franchising, or how can we systemize everything? How can we capture all the things that we've just been doing, how would I say, doing it organically? Maybe we need to actually put in place some set procedures and some standard operating procedures. Let's kind of codify everything so this becomes like a true business entity that I don't need to be a part of this business anymore, because all of my IP has now become the systemized, codified kit, which is like a franchise. Like when you buy a franchise, you're buying a system. It's somebody else has put that there, you're able to buy it. Which brings us to phase number 6, which might be where you're choosing to maybe exit the business or to transition. And that's a phase of business which sometimes can be extremely difficult, can also be incredibly rewarding as well. So the main thing for you to remember as far as SCORE is concerned is we would like you to consider us as being here for the life of your business. We don't care if you're pre-operational. We don't care if you're exiting. Anywhere that you might be, we're here to help you, and we'd love to help you. All right, just a few hurdles, and I just want to be mindful of time. Some startup hurdles, which might be already pretty obvious. But when you're starting a business, you've got to do that market validation that I referred to before. You've got to prove that customers want it. Otherwise, you're going to be the only one who thinks it's a great idea. Secondly, you're going to need financial planning, and it's a discipline, and it's incredibly important because numbers, unfortunately, do not lie. So it's building realistic projections, and it's putting in place the requirements that you're going to need to run the business. It's all about those financials. Then it becomes beyond bootstrapping and using your own funds. There's that startup capital, which I think is probably the biggest hurdle any business has. And finding that startup capital and getting that funded is in itself a massive phase, and one, again, which we would be happy to help you with in terms of how you're approaching it. Again, you can have a great product, a great service, but if you're not targeting it in the right channel to the right consumer, you're missing your target. So your go-to-market, which is basically getting your service or your product in front of the customer who can buy it to reach the right buyer, incredibly important for the business. Again, would help with that. And then finally, the legal and compliance. No SCORE mentor is a substitute for the legal advice that you need from a lawyer. It's that simple. There are a few kind of professional areas that we always talk to clients about. It's always about sooner or later, you probably want to know a banker. So even if you haven't yet started the business plan, or if you know a banker, it never hurts to get chatting to a banker sooner than later, because you don't want to be talking to them when you're desperate and you need the cash. You rather want to be talking to them up front before getting there. The second thing you're going to probably need is you're going to probably need an accountant. And I know accountants are very hard to find on island, but accountancy and accounting is so critically important, again, to your business. So if there is somebody you know in your network or in your family, this would be a great contact point for you. The third area that I normally recommend to clients when they're starting up is risk avoidance. That means that whenever you run a business, there's going to be risk, but you can mitigate that risk, and that's by talking to an insurance agent. And that's extremely important. So again, another professional area to consider as a advisor for you going forward is speak to an insurance agent or somebody who might be able to help you. For example, in a service-driven business like a marketing agency, they have something out there called errors and omissions insurance. I mentioned at the outset, we're all fallible. You might make a mistake, or you might give the best intended advice, which translates into somebody trying that out and it doesn't work out, and they might wish to come back from a legal aspect. In that case, you're probably going to be grateful that you have that errors and omissions insurance. So navigate those hurdles, focus with a plan. Moving to the growth and the growth part. We talked briefly there about in the growth phase where you're talking about that scaling. We're talking about unlocking minimum order quantity pricing. We're talking about staffing, so your talent and leadership piece, your additional funding that you're going to need for your cash flow, your working capital. It's going to be a key hurdle for you to overcome. And then it is as you get and as you scale and as you become bigger, you can start to lose touch, because really, especially if it's a personal brand and you've got people representing your brand to other people, the power of your brand is only as strong as the weakest link. So that means that quality control, you need to keep a very close eye on your employees, on your contractors, on anybody who's touching the customer with your brand. It's extremely important. And you want to make sure that you're keeping that delivery consistent. And then finally, in that growth phase is, as you are growing, that means that you are probably now starting to emerge on the radars of competitors who realize, wow, this business ABC is working. They're growing. We've noticed that we've been losing a little market share. We need to keep an eye on these guys. That means that the pressure will be on you to be able to stand out as your rivals react to your presence in the market and as they themselves try to grow. But the main thing is anticipate hurdles, take action, and grow with confidence. So the next thing I just wanted to share with you is there is here a QR code, and I believe you have a printout or will be receiving a printout of this presentation. You can use that QR code to visit our Score Broward website. And there is also the URL is there as well, if for some reason the QR code is not working. But this will give you directions to where you can sign up for a mentor, where you can register for the workshops, the webinars, and where you can find those templates and those webinars. So I think this will be a most powerful resource for you. This was just one I thought I'd pull up for you. And again, if you use that QR code, it'll take you directly to this. But this is going to help you. You can see here how they have bucketed the business journey into more condensed modules than what I used earlier in my chart. But this is where, whether, if you're planning and starting, well, our pre-operational attendee today, this is going to be a good place for you to start. Go check that out. You're going to find tools, resources, and guidance about your idea validation, about thinking about a business plan, etc. If you're in that growth phase and you're in that managing a growth phase, this is going to be a great spot for you to pop into and have a look and see what type of items are there to help in terms of strategy, templates, ways in which you can increase revenue, grow your business. You'll find that there. And then we don't have anybody on the call, but when it comes to transition and exit, that's another bucket. But within each of these buckets on that website, you are going to find some very useful tools. And behind all of this is, remember, you can be working with this toolkit, is what I will call it, on the website, but also interacting with Robert, Steve, and myself to help you along the way. So just a few examples, webinars, for example, these are a few of the national live webinars they had. If you're wanting to improve search engine optimization and driving website traffic, there's a course, there's the call out where it tells you this thing is going to cost $15 to attend that one. There's another one here, which is about how to grow your business through a 12-month growth plan. Another one about how to use AI agents, where you're looking to try to save time and grow your business. That one is a free cost. You'll see there's $0 against that cost item. And then there's another free one here, which is about planning for peak demand operations and execution in events. So in this case, just some examples of what you will find on that website. And then you have the actual recorded webinars. These are the ones that are there that you can go and visit at your own pace. Some of these are paid, some of these are free. But things like, event marketing playbook, how you turn event traffic into sales, bookkeeping, implementing AI in your business, and franchise ownership 101. There's another free course which is available. So at this point, I would say that you're very welcome to request a mentor at score.org. We'll get into a few details in a few moments. You can always choose a particular topic. You can arrange to meet regularly, either virtually, as I said, it can be done through Google Meet, or it can be done in person here on island. The main thing on your journey is this is a free advisory relationship for you. The value of this relationship is entirely in your hands. As your mentors, we will actually learn as much about you and your business as you will learn from techniques or advice that we share with you. But the main thing, and quite a few of my clients use me for this, to be honest with you, they almost kind of use me as an accountability coach, is we might meet, say, once every 6 weeks. We'll get to the end of the mentoring session. And at the end of the mentoring session, we'll agree, okay, here are kind of the action items that you want to be taking before our next meeting in 6 weeks' time. When we kick off that next meeting, we will revisit what those action items were, and we can talk through those. So that's kind of the approach to use there. We've talked about the workshops, webinars, and templates. As I say, those are live and recorded. And these are all items which are free of charge to you. And then finally, this is just a recap briefly on why it is that banks appreciate it when a client has come through SCORE, is they know that those clients coming to them with a business plan are probably going to be better prepared. They're going to have better documentation. They just know statistically that those businesses that have used SCORE or for mentoring tend to have higher survival rates. And they'll know that they are going to be talking to owners who themselves have learned along the way what is the difference between, I don't know, a balance sheet, an income statement, and cash flow projection. It's just being financially more literate, business-wise, with bankers that also helps those conversations. So again, we've got nothing to do with the lending process. That's all about the lender and clients, and you are also our clients, but we're certainly here to prepare you so that you're going to be able to better interface with the banks if you're seeking bank financing. So what would be an example here? And I just hypothesized this one. We can support owners in areas, the blue economy, for example, which is a big thing here in the Virgin Islands. Could be around retail, could be around professional services, goods, trades, items, where any of these business owners might be having challenges facing specific businesses. In the example of a local retail business, for example, it might be somebody who's struggling with that slowdown phase during the summer months when our sort of incoming tourist-driven dollars decline drastically, and we're using offsets to manage that period. Some people will shrink to then reopen. Other people will keep a baseline of operation running, whatever it might be. But in this case, it might be a business which have got that seasonal cash crunch time, but they figure out a way how to build cash flow by doing some projecting, reprojecting, maybe thinking about pricing, planning for these slower months. Those would be sort of examples where hopefully by consulting with a SCORE mentor, there's going to be improved profitability and reduced stress. So next steps, we'd love it if you'd like to request a free mentor. To that first meeting, think of it as a meet and greet. It's not intimidating. It's pretty open. It's an open dialogue. It's getting to know one another. And then from there, we can chart a way forward. Choose the way in which you want to meet with us, whether it's going to be, as I say, live or in person. And and start soon, because they say that the longer you wait to make the move, the less likely you are to do it. So I share it with you. And then this section is really just to introduce the three mentors who are very happy to interface with you here in the Virgin Islands. In St. Croix, we've got Robert Raffel, and Robert is actually on the call with us. But Robert has some great experience. He has worked across a multitude of different areas. A lot of these are very relevant to businesses here on the islands. And I really do think that he would be a massive help to you. So this QR code and that URL will take you to Robert's profile. You can go to his profile and you can request him as a mentor if that's your preference. Also on the call with us today is my colleague, Steve Clayton. Steve, I can tell you, this is a little naughty of me, but Steve is probably the most financially sound individual I have met. He knows an awful lot about banking. He had an incredible career in banking, has worked with different banks, small banks, micro loans, major loans. He's extremely accomplished. And again, a really great resource. Did I mention he's free? This would be his QR code and his URL if you'd like to reach out for Steve and have him as your mentor. And then finally, I'm done talking about myself. I'm sick and tired of it. But here's my QR code and my URL should you wish to reach out to start mentoring. So with that, any questions? Is there anything that you would like to ask?
Alrighty, thank you for that, Gordon. And participants do have the ability to unmute themselves. If you want to ask your question directly rather than type it in the chat, now is the time. We have a request in the chat to see Robert's QR code. And then someone else doesn't have a question. So that's just a request.
And I understand if you didn't capture anything during this live session, please don't worry. There will be a PDF version on its way to you, coming to you from the SBDC, from Sherika.
That is correct. So I don't see any hands raised and I don't see any further questions in the chat. So I guess it's safe to move forward. Alrighty, so the VI SBDC has so much more in store for USVI small businesses. You can visit our website at www.visbdc.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe to the VI SBDC YouTube channel for uploads of our webinars. And we encourage you to download the complimentary VI SBDC app from the appropriate app store. I am going to take some time to share my screen, navigate the VI SBDC website so you're able to find events. So let me share my screen. So this is our website. And if you were looking for events, you would go under training, you would select events, and then you would go here to the registration portal. And so right now what came up is because here at Type, I have on demand. So these are the webinars that happened this week. Monday, we had a marketing webinar with Liza. On Tuesday, we had a disaster preparedness session with Wayne from the SBA. And so after today's event, this webinar will be here. So make sure when you go online and you look at Type, select on demand, and these will populate. But I'm going to give you some information on what's to come. Alrighty, I think I'm hearing someone, not sure, maybe it's just some feedback, but I'll proceed. Okay, so our Agriculture Business Center today on St. Croix, they have a session until 1 p.m. Learning Under the Mahogany, Sustainable and Organic Practice in Action. And so we're here today in our live session with SCORE, talking about navigating and elevating and connecting to them with a mentorship. On May 20th, our Agriculture Business Center will be hosting Canva workshops. They have a morning session that runs from 10 a.m. to 11:30. And then they have an evening session that runs from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And so Wayne returns on the 26th with the 5 C's of SBA loan eligibility. Our Agriculture Business Center takes over again on May 27th. And they're doing a agriculture marketing webinar series introduction. And then on Thursdays in June, we are collaborating with VBAC, the Veterans Business Outreach Center. Our Puerto Rico and USVI team will be leading sessions on Introduction to Business Ownership on June 4th, Understanding Markets and Your Competitive Space on June 11th, the Economics of Small Business Startup on June 18th, and the Introduction to Business Planning on June 25th. So we encourage you to go ahead and register in advance, secure it on your calendar, and we hope to see you there. So let me go back to our live session because I do believe something came up in the chat. Okay, will this information be able to be viewed again? I came in a little late. So yes, when you go to the website, select on demand as the event type and you can watch at your leisure. And if you don't see webinars available on the SBDC website, just go ahead and check our YouTube channel. Everything is going to be right there for you to watch at your leisure. And you can send me an email and I'll be happy to get you the presenter's information or a copy of the presentation. Alrighty, so great information. Thank you. So I don't see any more questions. So, Gordon, thank you so much for delivering today's session and helping our attendees learn what SCORE is about. It's always a pleasure collaborating with your team on this initiative. And so to everyone in the audience, on behalf of the entire VI SBDC network, compliments of our State Director, Ms. Karen Jones. We thank you for being here and we wish you a productive rest of day. Take care, everyone.
Bye.